here. Excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you and welcome everyone to the STARC monthly eyeball meeting for the month of March. We're super happy you're all here. It's a weird echo. My name is John Riley, KU5I. I am your newly elected president. Very happy to be here with you all, hosting my first meeting. We have a great program tonight. We have Jeff from the Weather Service walk us through Skywarn, which is super cool. Looking forward to that. So y'all probably know the format pretty quickly. We have some new folks here, so we're going to go around and do a round and say what our call signs are, what our name is, and a little thing about yourself if you'd like. Then you can just pass it along. Is that cutting out for just me, or is that cutting out for you? Okay, hang on. We're going to switch mics here.
That's why we have two.
All right, let's try that. Oh, that sounds a lot better. Okay, excellent. So let's see here. So again, John, KU5I. We'll start in the middle and work our way around. So Mr. Jim, you're closest to me. Why don't you go ahead and get us started? Nobody thinks anybody. Yeah. All right, let's step over here. Yeah. Excellent. Oh, go ahead, William. Excellent. Mr. Charles. Excellent. Excellent. We're happy you're here, Dylan. Excellent. Let's move way back there, Dale. All right, moving around. Right. Well, I will share with you, I used your joke the other day of that exact comment about 20-year-old blondes, and the response was, I won't say who said it. So do you know any of those? So anyway, moving on. Okay. Excellent. Moving over. Wayne, you want to pick it up there? All right, Joel. Mrs. Radar. All right, Mr. James, and it's lurking in the back of the room there. Well, excellent. My pleasure. Thank you all for being here. So we have a regular agenda that we go through, a couple of things that we talk about, like the repeaters and the VE testing and testing in general, and then I'll step aside and let you all stop listening to me, and we can get to our program. So, Mr. James, AD5TC, would you like to give us an update on testing, what's going on with that, and the latest drama from cores? Actually, James, you want to come up here and hit the mic there?
We had a very good testing session over at Dairy Queen in Portland Monday night. We had one gentleman that passed both the tech and the general, and he's well on his way to extra because he took all three tests, and he's already showing good promise on the extra class test. So we look forward to seeing him back shortly. We had another gentleman come in and pass a tech and did fairly well on the general, even though he didn't pass it. But his next session he'll be a general. And then we had one come in and take the extra test and did quite well. And then we had one other person taking the test. So for the 4 people that showed up, thank you for being there. We're here to help everybody that is interested in upgrading or getting that first license. Our next big venture will be the 30th of this month. It's going to be a test run for technician class license. It'll be a teach and test. So we'll teach for 6-8 hours, whatever it takes, to where the students are comfortable and ready to take the test. And then I'll come buzzing in there from my other engagement, and we'll sit up and give the test. And hopefully everybody will pass, and we'll have 3 to 4 new technicians. Based on this class, we are moving forward to a larger class. I don't know the date on that yet. Jim is still working on that. Looking at, where'd he go to? Jim, how many we have for the second class? Yeah. Probably going to be in the neighborhood of 20. So we may decide to do a class that large, may not, depends. We've got the facility for it, but it's going to take more than one person standing up there trying to put that on. So we're going to need teachers or instructors, and all you VEs out there, we're going to need your help as well. 20 people in a test session, that's a pretty good test session for us. So kind of put that on your calendar and keep it in mind. Got some questions? More than likely it'll be here. We're still working on that. We have to make arrangements with our host, and we're very grateful for our host for making this facility available to us. Mike? Michael? Yes, we're working on a complete booklet, and it will be, unlike some of the other material out there, it will be correct answer only. In other words, a student is going to be exposed to the material, exposed to the test question, and the correct answer. And we're encouraging this type of thing for all the way through, general and for extra. Okay, 27, 20. Yeah, uh, that is correct. The address here is 2727 Airline Road, Corpus Christi, Texas. Okay. Uh, so that's what's in the work for now. There's been some changes on the VE status. Uh, a technician formally could get and hold a VE status. That is no longer true. You have to have at least a general to apply for VE status. And please, guys, look at it. It's on the ARRL website, and we can always use the extra help. There's quite a number of VEs here tonight. Some of us have been VEing for a day or two, but for us, we really enjoy it. It's a very special night in our uh, program that we have, personal program of what we want to accomplish, and we love to do it. On behalf of on behalf of all the VEs, we thank you. But guys, most of the VEs are also Elmers, helpers, so don't hesitate. Yeah. Yeah. Well, back in the day, there was this ham, and he said he was getting a lot of help from this guy down the street who was also a ham. And uh, they asked him, well, what happened? He said, well, I did great until Elmer moved away. And that's pretty much the story behind how Helper got to be Elmer. So, yeah, yeah. We don't know everything about everything, but we know a little bit about something, and we may just know what you need to know to answer your question. So don't hesitate to ask. Okay. Thank you very much. See y'all all on the 30th, particularly you VEs out there. Let's help these first individuals struggle through so that we can be ready for the big class. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, James. Before you scurry off here, I just wanted to take a moment and reiterate how much we appreciate all you do for the club. And we went ahead and we're starting a new program where we're going to start giving certificates again. And I couldn't think of anybody better. Actually, it was Jim's idea, but I can't think of anybody better than for you to get the first one there. So thank you so much for all you do. Really appreciate it. Much deserved. And you're very welcome. One more comment I was going to make, and not even remotely qualified to make this, is about CORS. CORS is going to start requiring two-factor authentication at the end of this month. So if you don't have your password, and CORS is the system you have to do to get to your license. So if your license is coming up for renewal, you got to make sure you have your password and set up that two-factor authentication, because we all like calling the FCC, right? So go ahead and get that all taken care of. Thank you so much. And then just a quick update on some club business, and then we'll pass on to repeaters because this is repeater related. This week, the executive board of the club met with the San Antonio Digital Radio Club to just do a meet and greet and talk about linking our Fusion repeater to their network. That meeting went really well. Super nice group of people. To Rachel's point, most hams are awesome people. You know, there's a couple of bad apples here and there. I'm not going to say it's all sunshine and roses, but for the majority, all hams that I encounter are super nice people. And these folks are a great extension of our club. They're super happy to have us. They're in Hondo and San Antonio and Austin and Kerrville. There was a fellow from Fort Worth. It's a great group of people. So I'm really happy to report that we're expanding that. And I was just in sort of a self-education thing. I was doing the math the other day on our own repeaters, and our repeaters cover more than 2,500 square miles. That's roughly the size of Delaware, right? That's a lot. I mean, that's not a lot by Texas standards, but that's a lot. You know, when you start talking to your friends on the East Coast, tell them, oh yeah, well, we cover the state of Delaware with our repeaters, because that's kind of cool. Which is a good segue into repeaters. So I'll pass the baton to Jim or Wayne. Which one would you like to chat about our repeater situation? I never would have guessed. You have like the best radio voice. So I'll give it to the radio technician to talk about the radio voice.
Well, I want to thank Wayne for all of the work he does on getting out and helping with the repeaters and getting everything going. The 8.2 repeater is doing very well. Everything is hunky dory. Things are still going along well with the tower site. We have a club member who mows the tower site every now and then, and that's our agreement with them in order to keep the 8.2 repeater on that site. For those who don't know, it's up 450 feet in central Corpus Christi off Navigation and Bear Lane. Santos is the ham that's doing our mowing for us. The 8.8 repeater is, we finally got all the bugs out of it, and it's doing great. Now we've got fusion on it. The 442.25 repeater, which is on the same side, it's co-located with the 8.8, which both of those are at 600 feet on the KZFM tower, which is just outside of Petronia. It's about 13 miles southeast of Corpus. And so it's not as good a repeater for handhelds as the 8.2 is, but it's got a very good coverage area. And the 442 is down while we get the All-Star link set up on it. We had an issue with it not talking, the computer and the repeater not handshaking. And so Mark, WA2MCT, is working on that. Thank you, Sparky. Is working on that for us. And hopefully it will be up in the next few days. Don Nattinger, our technician that does that, is out of town right now with a family emergency. And when he gets back, we're not that old. The 147.100, which is on the bank on Shoreline, has the weather service on it. So if there's bad weather in the area, that's the repeater you want to listen to, because the weather service warnings are rebroadcast on that repeater. And the Lexington repeater is up and working. It has IRLP and Echolink on it. And I'm sure when we get to Joel, he will address a little more on the Lexington situation. But so far, so good. All the repeaters are up and going. No major problems. When we get 442 back up, we'll be in good shape.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. I would just add one piece about the repeaters. The repeaters are property of the club, offered as a service to the region and to hams in the area. I know I don't have to say this to any of you, but I'm just going to put us on the record, as it were. We do have a code of conduct on those repeaters, and we like everybody to follow it. And I just know every single person in this room is doing that. And that makes it pleasant for everyone to use, because as we all know, there's no privacy in ham radio. So anything you say out there is heard to everyone, licensed or not, and may not be adults and so forth. So that's the kind of thing we don't want to deal with, and just keep that in mind as you go forward. And I deputize each and every one of you. If you hear inappropriate conduct on that repeater, step in and say something. Step in and say, we don't do that here. Please clear the channel, because we just don't want any of that in our house. And I think about that as being in our house. It's like somebody coming in your living room and saying things you don't want to say. So, James, did you have something you want to say? Oh, that's a good question. Why don't we look into that? Yeah. Oh, it is there. Okay, awesome. Excellent. Super. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, awesome. So it's part of the dues, same engine. Okay, fantastic. And those repeaters are used not just for our entertainment, but also for community service. We're going to talk about Skywarn here, and that's a good segue to talk about Beach to Bay. So, Rusty, I see you just pulled out your phone, so I'm going to put you on the spot here. You want to talk about Beach to Bay? Anything to say about that? Okay, come on up.
All right. My name is Rusty. I'm K5BXN. And I talked to Doug today, which is one of the race coordinators, and they're expecting us to be there, which is a good thing. And I think, and we got all the legs taken care of, thank goodness, and which is a good thing. We got it done early. And I think this year we're going to take our own canopy. Because last year, we were in there with all the runners and stuff, and someone else's canopy, and it got full real quick. So we take our own canopy, my own tables and chairs. That way, some of the operators have somewhere to sit when they come visit. Because yes, we do it every year. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You betcha. Thank everybody for shows up. I'm gonna list the names of the legs and who's taking them. That way, because we're in. That way they can hear it. Augie will be doing leg 1 and leg 2. How that one works out is that the guy runs, and then he's coming back to leg 2. So Augie will already be there on both of them. Okay, and then William Lee is 3, Perry 4, Wayne Border 5, and Stephen Holly, here you are, will be 6, and I'm the finish line. So anytime after the race, when your leg finishes, you can always, we'll talk more before that, I'm sure, but you can always come to the finish line, and I'll have some tables there and chairs. I want you to sit down and watch. It'll be May 19th. Yeah. So, yeah. So, oh. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. So I think that's all I have. If anyone has any questions, or I brought some papers with a little map in the back that has everybody that's going to be in their positions, and that way we know where everybody's at. Jim, I know you talked to me about getting on a different frequency. Uh, we could talk about that later. I just want to touch base with you today. So other than that, there's no questions, then we're done. Here you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And once again, I love that we're doing stuff in the community, right? We're not just a club that gets together and eats cookies every month, to just see who's got beards and who lost more hair, but rather we're doing stuff in the community, and I really appreciate that. Yeah, cookies and drinks today. Rusty. May the 18th. May 18th. All right, excellent. And anybody online has any questions, you can reach out to Rusty and he can give you all the answers. And Jim touched on this really quick, and just for our new folks, one of the very many neat things about this club is we have a radio room on the USS Lexington, which licensed radio operators can go and operate from. And the fact that that thing's 1 there and 2 functions is thanks to Joel and Wayne over here. So I'll just pass the mic to Joel, and he can give us a quick update on what's going on the USS Lexington, CV-16. While he's coming up, I'll say they have a comic book now called The Blue Ghost, I saw, which looks kind of cool. So,
yeah, Joel, W1 JTD. I was off the first of the month, but that didn't stop things from happening on the Lex. We also had a a big 2 weeks here with all the kids coming in with spring break. It was absolutely crowded. We're seeing record numbers. It's really been great. As far as radio goes, the new radio room that's on the hangar deck is cleared out now. They were able to get in there last week and get the bunk beds out, so the lights are all working in there, and we're ready to start moving tables and chairs and any radio equipment we want in there. In the large radio room on the O2 level, we are operating the 7300 on our ship's forward antenna, and we have a remote tuner up there for that. And currently, we're using my amplifier, a 600 watt solid state amplifier on that unit, so you can actually get out and make contacts. The amplifier we had donated by Chuck Hoffman's wife. Chuck's a silent key. I've got that at my house, and hopefully, probably 2 weeks from now, I'll be able to get it up to San Antonio and have ham repair up there in San Antonio look at that for us and get that operating. Yes. Ron McMurdy. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Well, I don't have any plans myself. Looks like Tom is going to try to get a commercial company to do that, but I haven't heard anything recently about that. Yeah, we had it up. We had some tuning issues with it. We tried to work with Stepper, didn't get a lot of response out of them. It was blown down. Then it's just a matter of weather and everything, but looks like we may be getting a commercial company to come do that instead of have our hams get up there. It's up in the air on a platform, and probably shouldn't all of us old guys be up there working on it anyway. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. 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 So, but we'll see where that one goes. The Scanty, currently the tuner, or the automatic tuner, which is out at the antenna, it came off the side of the ship, and we got it put back up, but we need to go up, open it up, because it is not tuning at this point. So it was working excellent. Dave was doing a whole lot of contacts on it, and just when he was doing really well, of course, we had a problem. So we're going to try to get that taken care of and just continue on with our project. Yeah, yeah. There's always something new to do with ham radio, that's for sure. That's pretty much all I've got on the Lexington.
Thank you, Joel. Yeah, ham radio is like painting the Lexington, because you start at one side to get to the other, and then the first side needs to be repainted again. And it's a never-ending circle. You just go round and round and round and round. So another piece that we do here a lot is we're once again involved in community service, and that is emergency communications, and that is RACES, which is the Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service, and ARES, which is the Amateur Radio Emergency Service. We have both of those here. I would say ARES is probably a little on the light side at the moment, and we're looking for a new coordinator for that for this region. But Jim is the district radio officer for District 20 for RACES. So I'm going to pass the mic to you, Jim, again, and have you give us an update on that.
Thank you, John. Whoops. Yeah, we are still trying to find the club is an ARES club. And so we're still trying to find a liaison between the ARES group here. They had some of their structure change, and some of the people that were in charge have left their group. And so we're still trying to find somebody to pick up the slack there and be the liaison between ARES and the club. As far as RACES is concerned, we are moving forward. We've started a 2-meter net because we have so many technician members now in RACES, and they were left out because of the state nets are on HF. And so this way, we've started a 2-meter net for this district. For For those who don't know, RACI's primary job is continuance of governance. Our primary job is to provide communications between the state agencies and the EOCs. We have a system set up at DPS, a permanent system there. There's one at the city. There's one in Portland. There's going to be one in Sinton. Their new EOC has a RACI's room in it. And so we're moving forward with getting that, but we need operators. If you would like to join, you go through a background check. You have to agree to be here during the emergency storm. That's what we're going to get, so that we can actually use you and assign you to an EOC. You get to be friends with them, so you know who you're working with, and that's a primary job that we have. I asked the captain at DPS what they wanted out of us, and since the job at DPS is to talk to Austin, all of the EOCs need to be able to talk to DPS. And so that's what we need. We need people to be able to run in the EOCs to talk to the disaster district EOC. And if you would like to join, we need you. So we've got a lot of holes in the program right now. So give me a shout. Yes, Mike. Certification for what? I'm sorry. Oh, no. No, when you join RACI's, you go through a DPS background check, because the places we work are in secure systems. They are also moving forward with a new ID situation where we're going to have FEMA accepted ID cards instead of just state cards. And so it's getting to be so that everybody's on one page. You know, when you walk into to any OC or any jurisdiction with your ID on, they know you've been vetted. They know you're cool and you're okay. Thank you, John.
Excellent. And to your question about the FEMA classes, those aren't required. However, those are free and able to take. Anybody can take them. Encourage you to do that. If you Google that, I believe it's 101. It's not sequential, if I remember correctly. There's a 110 in there. But you can take those, and encourage everybody who, even if you're not part of one of those emergency communications programs, once again, we're hams. We can always come in handy, and it's always good to know those types of things. So if you are so inclined, I encourage you to do that. Because you're a good citizen. That's why. It's a really snazzy certificate, right? You get it hanging on your wall, right? Exactly. Make a little 4-box there, put it in your office. Yeah, I mean, I just do it just for that, right? Okay, so that's all the official stuff we have. I'd open up to the floor. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to address the rest of the group? Any ideas, any suggestions? And if not, I will excuse myself. All right. Okay. I like show and tell. Okay. All right. Okay. Super. Mr. Jim.
I do have one thing. We have an HF radio that Mike donated to the club some time back. It's an ICOM 740, really nice radio. We don't have a mic for it. So if you have an ICOM 8-pin mic laying around that you don't need and would like to give it to the club or sell it to the club, let us know, because we need one.
And relatedly, if you would like to buy a radio for your mic that you're not using, come see us, because we can help you out with that, right? What was it you were saying, Rachel? We were talking the other day about, all these UPS boxes show up on my front door, and I'm like, I don't know what all those are doing to my wife. Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. My wife says it's just another wire. That's her response to it. And so hers are all books. So you have your hobbies as it goes. Okay. Well, super. With that, I will close the club portion of this and pass it on to our special guest. And let's talk about the weather because that's a cool subject. And once again, as you probably heard, we're getting to hurricane season, so we all should be well versed on that. So thank you very much, and we'll pass it off to Jack.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. My name is Jeff Lutz, and I am a meteorologist at the Weather Service office. I'm also KC8 CWI. So if you look me up, you'll see I live in Portland now. I moved down about 10 months ago from northern Michigan. As I was telling somebody earlier, it's like other than the heat down here and the snow and lack of heat up in the north, we actually have a fairly similar sort of things with severe weather where we don't get as nearly as much as some of the other places. Yep. Oh yes, I was here for most of last summer, so yep. Mm-hmm. Yep, I was here for since I got in May 26th was my first day, so I went through the whole summer. So, all right. Well, we can get started here. Oh, helps if I turn on my little pointer. Let's see. Here we go. There we go. So we'll cover there's about 6 sections of this. Some of it we'll probably go through a little faster so that we have enough time here for questions at the end. But we'll talk about the National Weather Service a little bit and the severe weather hazards, the severe weather climatology, instruments, concepts, severe storms, and then storm spotting techniques, as well as then how to report and weather safety. So we have 122 offices across the United States. That includes Alaska and Hawaii. We also have about 13 river forecast centers, which are the red dots, and then there's 9 national centers in the blue across the area that help support all the local offices. For the Corpus Christi itself, we cover everything from Laredo and then out across to the coastal bend and then out 16 nautical miles into the Gulf of Mexico. So we do forecasts for all those for whatever type of forecast needs to be done, whether it's fire weather, public, marine, as well as then we do the warnings for the entire area, watches of the non-convective type, that is severe thunderstorms. That goes to SPC in Norman, Oklahoma, but they work closely with us whenever they're going to issue something, like this morning. I got woken up by that one. And then the one that, and then WPC, which is in Washington, D.C., Silver Springs, Maryland, is the other one that helps us out with things like flooding and that. So we work in conjunction with the national centers whenever there's an issue coming up with that we're expecting something to happen. So what we do, we keep a continuous weather watch 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Usually there's about 2 people on any given shift. Usually we have a third one during the daytime, just for the number of phone calls and things that we end up doing. We issue warnings for tornadoes, severe storms, floods, hurricanes, and other weather hazards. Our mission is to protect life and property. So we try to get the information out to you, all of you, so that you can take the appropriate action for what you need to do. So why do we need spotters? Well, as good as radar can be, we need to have truth on the ground, eyes on the ground, to be able to see what's going on out there. So that gives the communities downstream time to prepare. If you see something, hopefully we already have a warning out for it, but if you see something, we can add that into our statements that would then go out to the public so that people realize, oh, this is actually happening somewhere else and it's just upstream. I better get ready. And so you're trained to identify the severe storms and report to the Weather Service out of that. The radar problem. So, as I probably don't have to explain to you guys because you're ham radio operators, we run on, I think it's somewhere around 2 gigahertz as far as the wavelength that we're using. And it's line of sight. So As the earth curves, it goes out. We are able to transmit a little lower now than what we used to be. We had a limit at a half a degree above the horizon. It's now 3/10 of a degree above the horizon, so we can see out a little bit further, at least lower. So it helps out with places like Laredo. So it's not quite so, the beam isn't quite so high like like you're looking at cloud B. So that's one of the things. Yeah. Are we able to? There was a process that nationally they identified places that needed to have them, and so then they worked with the FCC and Congress, because I think they actually put something in that said we couldn't be below that. But I think they've since taken a look at the reasons why they did that, and so they're allowing some of the offices to do that. Some of the mountain offices, like Salt Lake, their radar is up on a mountain, and so they actually can go negative and be able to, because they've had tornadoes and severe thunderstorms break out below their radar beam, and then not be able to put a warning out with it. So in our case, it helps us with getting things looking farther out Laredo, as well as then farther out into the Gulf, so we can see better at the lower levels. So we also do have a cone of silence. Kind of looking here, you can see there's a little opening around where the radar is, so the radar can't quite see directly there, as well as then when we look at the cross section, vertically, we have a limit to how high we go. We only do so many slices up through about 19, 20 degrees. And so that's one of the issues, is the closer into the radar you get, the less you can see upward, and it doesn't go all the way up. So, people are needed even around in Corpus Christi area, so we can, sometimes we won't be able to see the structure of the storm as well. So we need to have visual confirmation of what's happening on the ground. So just to go through, we have a severe thunderstorm, which is defined as large hail. So it has to be an inch or greater in diameter, so the size of a quarter now. Damaging winds at 58 miles an hour. And if you wonder why it's such a specific number there, can anybody figure out what that might have been? It was 50 knots is what that is. So originally, when the warnings came out, it was originally for the aviation community. And so that's where they tend to use knots for their winds. So flash flooding, and then we have the tornado and water spouts, as well as then any marine warnings that we put out, then they have 34 knots, which is right at where the gale force winds start. So anytime there's gale force winds, if it's not part of a larger system, if it's part of a thunderstorm, which can be a hazard for the small boaters, then that's when we usually put those out. Classifying tornadoes. Most of South Texas has tornadoes that are in the EF0 and EF1 range. So we're looking at wind speeds of 65 to 110 miles an hour, or 110. The majority of them, of course, that's also about where straight line winds are for a thunderstorm. So sometimes people will say that there's a tornado, and it may have been just straight line winds, and it doesn't really matter. It's just wind damage. So, but either way, that it's something that we have to keep in mind. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit. So, the only EF4 or EF5 that we've had is an EF4, and that was in 1902 with Goliath, which is similar to with what Northern Michigan is. We've had one EF4 tornado; it's the highest they've had, and that was over in a small town called Manistee along the Lake Michigan shoreline. So most of our tornadoes fall within this as well up there. So I feel like I'm kind of, even though I'm getting to know the area, the weather itself has not been much different than what we had up there. Weak tornadoes. 67% of South Texas tornadoes are EF0 to EF1, the weak type. They cause about 5% of all deaths. Their lifespan is usually 1 to 2 minutes. Wind speeds of up to 110 miles an hour. Most are not detected by radar, and that's because their cross section is so small, and our range gates are 1 degree. And so by the time you get out even a few miles, 1 degree spreads to quite a width as far as that's concerned. So that's one of the drawbacks to it. And they're difficult to get spotter confirmation depending on how dense of a population center it is. If you're here, you know, Corpus Christi has lots of people around here, this general area, Cal Allen, all the way down to Flower Bluff. But if you get out past Alice and into the brush country, then you've got a lot of ranches, and who knows if anybody sees it when it's going out there. So most are unreported. EF2 and EF3s, they're only about 30% of the tornadoes that we get in South Texas. They do cause more deaths because they are so strong. The lifespan can be up to an hour, and then wind speeds are up to 165 miles an hour. Now, these are much more easily identified on radar, and usually we get a lot of spotter confirmation with the bigger, stronger ones, especially as we get up to the EF4, EF5 one. We do have one case that we'll look at where you can see what the radar looks like for an EF5, and it's like, I wish they would all, well, wish they could look like that, at least on radar. Yeah. I think it's because most people don't see it. Most people, when they see a tornado, are pretty excited. So, and they okay. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. At least then we'll go back and we'll look at the radar with the time of your report and see what's going on. It may be that we're missing something, because sometimes the signatures are really small on the radar and it's easy to just overlook it. But if you're seeing something on the that's happening, then we'll take a look at it. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Both. It's a tornado. It's a tornadic water spout. So they are known as water spouts when they're over the water. But if they're part of a supercell large complex, like we'll talk about in a little bit, they're tornadic to put down there. We do have non-tornadic water spouts that happen too. And those are a little different. But that's something that we'll look at here in a little bit as well. Violent tornadoes, EF4s, EF5s, they don't happen as often, 3% of the time in South Texas. And it's like I said, the EF4, the last one was Goliad. I think that Eric may have included a little bit more, but of maybe South Central Texas and as well as Deep South Texas. So, yeah, this particular storm here is, yeah. And they cause 65% of the deaths nationally, and their lifespans can be 1 to 2 hours or more. Because we'll take a look at the Mayfield, Kentucky, from 2021 in December, which had a very long track to it. So that's one later on here in this. They're very easily identified on radar, and almost everybody can see what's going on with those. Marine thunderstorms. So we do issue special marine warnings, and it's for, as I said earlier, marine winds to 34 knots, water spouts, usually non-tornadic, but we will also put the tornadic ones on there, and then hail. And in their case, they specifically needed at 3/4 of an inch, which was the old standard we used 20 years ago. But they still, the marine community still wants 3/4. So the size of a dime or bigger is what we warn for out there. On average, we issue about 70 special marine warnings a year out in our coastal waters. So we'll take a little bit of a look at how the Storm Prediction Center interacts with us locally. One of the things that they do are the severe weather outlooks. This one's for the Alabama, Louisiana, some of the southern states over there. They end up doing with these outlooks, they are in basically, well, 6 categories, but 5 of them that mean stuff for the severe thunderstorms. So we have marginal, which is the lowest category as far as the severe outlooks. Means you could probably have a severe storm. Some of them are going to get strong, probably not a lot of them. As you get into the slight category, you're going to end up with a few more. There's a percentage to these, and it's like 5% for the dark green are within 25 miles of a point. It's a statistical thing, but so that you don't have to remember. Just remember that there's the possibility that something could happen that day. When you get into the slight, you're probably going to see a couple of storms within an area that happen. And this is usually about the time during that day that they will issue a watch, at least in the slight risk. Very few times will you ever see a watch come up with marginal in it. But then everything else just gets worse. We don't see a whole lot of much past enhanced. Moderate and high are usually up closer to the tornado alley. That's Oklahoma. What is that? Yeah, North Texas, Nebraska. What's the area that's up by Dallas that's considered? Well, the Red River Valley, but you know that northern part of East Texas. Yes, that some of that area. So that's, yep. So how we work with them at the office and at every other weather service office, they do the outlooks days 1 through 8. So they go out through at least a week, like we do with our forecast. They put more details in on 1 to 3 days 1 through 3. So the next 3 days they'll have a specific outlook for a general area there with those 5 categories that they use. Then when it becomes time, they will issue severe thunderstorm and tornado watches, which usually last 3 to 6 hours at any one time. They call us when they're going to do that to let us know what's going to happen, and then how we feel that it's going to that we need to handle it locally. So then what we'll do is we'll say leave this county out or add this county in, and then we'll go from there based off of what their guidance is and what we think. And then we usually talk about it a little bit, and then they issue the official product after that. So we usually know at least an hour or so beforehand that what's going to happen with the watch boxes. And then we really ramp up our tempo of what's going on in the office. The warnings are all done right out of Corpus Christi for this area. They're usually 30 to 60 minutes long, and hopefully we get them out, at least on average, 10 to 15 minutes before the potential of severe weather impacts. So a lot of times we can see the spin in the radar inside of a storm before it hits. So that's the goal, is to get that higher, get the amounts higher. Right now, with what we've got, the technology, that's not bad. Most people can usually find some sort of shelter in that time period, but they are working on new techniques and things coming down the road here over the next 5 to 10 years that should put things even further out in time. Okay, watches versus warnings. So the watch means be prepared, and that just means that the conditions are right for severe weather to occur. So we are expecting severe thunderstorms to kick up somewhere within this area. This is one covers a lot of the Victoria Crossroads, and then up in the hill country up by San Antonio. So those are ones they'll get on a big conference call ahead of time with SPC, and in this case, the New Braunfels office, as well as our office, would then all talk. The 3 of us would all talk about that. Oh, and then some of this goes into Houston's area, so would all 3 offices be on the line as well as SPC at the time. The warning means something is happening or it's about to happen, so you need to take cover. Or if you're like me, go outside and take a look. we had a tornado. It ended up being an EF3 that went through the town that I've been living in for the past 20 years up in northern Michigan. And that was the first thing. I almost showed the clip last night when I was giving this talk before about me out there when my wife was going, should we take cover? And I'm going, yeah, you go. And then she's, no, you need to come with me. And then I'm going, no, wait, I got to call the office. You know, it's just my brain's just going. And I was babbling like an idiot watching it because it was the first time I'd actually seen one live. Yeah. What's that? Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know about that tornado? Oh, okay. Yeah, it started not too far from Antrim, or may have been just barely inside Antrim County before it crossed up through Gaylord. So, right. Well, in that part of Otsego County, there's not a lot either. All right. So our climatology. Well, we were talking a little bit about this and how I said that the similarities, at least as far as the climatology of how often this stuff happens. So here's northern Michigan, and here's South Texas. So that's why I said, you know, we're it's kind of funny. The guy who does the information technology specialist for the Gaylord office now was here, and he'd been at our office for about 8 months before I got my reassignment down here. So it was kind of funny. No, I'm not the IT, but anyways, he went up there, and it's like swapping it. And he said, this is where all the large CAPE goes to die. So CAPE is a number that we use for the potential energy in the atmosphere. And sometimes you'll see a large number come up, and you're going, wow, if we saw that up in northern Michigan, we'd be like going crazy for it. But yeah, then nothing happens. We'll talk a little bit about why that is. But this is so if you think about it, it's the categorical slight risk. So the slight risk category, this is how many days it occurs on average each year. So in our case, we might see it anywhere from about 3 to 9 days a year, depending on where you are in South Texas. So basically, Corpus Christi to Laredo, south of there, we're looking at 3 to 6 days. North of there, 6 to 9 days, they might get into the slight risk. A lot of times, like this morning, you know, the Victoria Crossroads region has been the area that it usually targets before it gets much further south. So, and this is for the enhanced risk. So everything starts going down as you get higher on the scale anyway. So, and most of it's in that general tornado alley that we're really look for where all the major severe weather happens. So our time of day for severe thunderstorms, they can occur anytime during the day. So don't let this little lull here in the middle of the day fool you. They can happen there. But on average, during the heat of the day, they happen anywhere from about 2 p.m. through about 11, 10 o'clock at night. And then there's a little bit of an uptick around midnight before it just starts going down. And part of that is there are some nighttime processes that help to get these thunderstorms to continue going on, so that we may have to put severe thunderstorm warnings out in the middle of the night. And then the tornadoes kind of follow the same thing. They really need a lot more heat. So it's anywhere during the daytime. Some can happen at night, but usually it's that heat of the day that they thrive off of. All right. So the Doppler radar, we have 155 networked ones across the nation. They operate 24/7, 365. Of course, we do take them down for maintenance from time to time on a quiet weather day. They only detect the rain and aerosol particles in the atmosphere. And they also happen to pick up windmills. A lot of that ground clutter that you see, especially there north of Portland and Nueces Bay, yeah, all the windmills up there. During severe weather, new scans will update every 1 to 2 minutes. It's come a long way since when it first was deployed back in the mid-90s and when I was first getting into the weather service by the late 90s. Amazing technology, but still we need ground truth. It only can go so far. Now, one of the things that happened, we know about the Doppler, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit, But the newest and one of the bigger advances that have come up is the dual pole, which is dual polarization. So we send out a horizontally transmitted pulse and a vertically transmitted pulse. We come back and we measure the differences between them. We combine it to get the full reflectivity, but then we also get a differential one as well. Reflectivity, so this is what most people are used to seeing, is just the basic of where is the hot spot, which is the higher reflectivity, which can mean rain, heavier rain, and then we start getting into the hail. The one thing when you're looking at this mode, it infers where hail is just by the fact that it's the higher reflectivity. But the nice thing with the dual polarization, which comes up after this one, I think. Nope, they left that out. Okay. Anyway, with dual polarization, when you get that difference in the reflectivity, what it ends up doing is giving us kind of a rough idea of what the overall shape of the particles. So large hail looks different than what rain does, and large raindrops look different than small raindrops. And so we can, the algorithms go in there and it can sift through and say, it's more likely that hail's falling here than it is, and this is rain out in this area. So we are able to take a look at that stuff and be able to figure that out. And that really helps us, at least in determining, like I said, the hail portion of it. And it also helps do a few things that we'll take a look at in a little bit as well. But with the velocity, then we can see winds going out away from the radar and coming in towards the radar. And when they're very close together, so we know then there's a pretty good spin, especially if they're higher intensity like this. You do have some of that here, but they're much lower winds. So there probably isn't a big circulation there, unlike this. So that's what we're looking for, the potential for a tornado. All right. So outside of the radar, then we have the weather balloons, which we still do. And when they are very windy, let me see if I can kill the noise, because all that is wind noise on there. There we go. But this is what it looks like when you've got a very windy condition and the balloon wants to take him. He's struggling to keep that back there. And then they're getting ready to launch that here as a double. Yeah, that was actually last night. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you guys are interested in watching one, if you come by right at 6, just happen to drive by the airport, you could probably see us doing it. But I don't stop on the road, because then the airport police will probably come through and tell you to move on. So if you really want to see one, give a call into the office and we'll see if we can't set up an appointment to do that, as well as then also take a tour of the office. We do allow those now. We're far enough past COVID that we can do tours in the office again. So, and we're just a part of a network across the United States and actually across the world. But these are the United States sites right here. Oh. Okay, surface observing. So this is one of our ASOSs, the Automated Surface Observing System, and these are all across the United States. And at a lot of the airports, Corpus Christi, Alice, we have one in Port Aransas at the Mustang Airport there, Rockport at that Aransas County Airport up there. I mean, they're across there. And then plus there's some other ones that the FAA has fielded as well. And all this data is now coming into our site. So we can see what's going on based on the surface observations. And we get that stuff in constantly. So we can draw up new maps every hour, every 15 minutes, you name it, we can see a lot of it. And that helps us with the thunderstorm ingredients, all those last two especially. The main ingredients are instability, moisture, and lift. So instability, I think, yes, is the measure of air parcels' tendency to want to accelerate upward. The greater instability, the greater potential for severe thunderstorms. So we'll take a look for those hot spots and see if it's going to fall in over top of our area during the when we're forecasting. We also need moisture. In this case, the Gulf of Mexico is our primary moisture source. We do get some over the mountains across Mexico from the Pacific, but that's a little bit less because as you get across the mountains, that tends to squeeze some of that moisture out. And then when you drop down to the other side, that process of coming down the other side of the dry starts to dry everything up, which is why areas like the Rio Grande Plains and the Western Brush Country are fairly dry most of the time. So you end up with that, and then but we get so much moisture here that we end up a little bit greener a lot of the time. We also need lift. So in this case, we need a trigger, something to kick those air parcels up. So we look at large scale boundaries like cold fronts, fronts and dry lines, small scale things like the sea breeze and thunderstorm outflows that can kick off more thunderstorms. One of the reasons why we have such a hard time with getting anything when we have probably enough instability, that's what CAPE is, a measure of instability, as I mentioned that earlier, is the fact is the cold fronts get hung up as you get, they just can't push further south through the because they just don't have the punch they do like during other times of the year. So the spring, we can get the cold air coming down out of Canada, down the Front Range and in here, and they'll actually get down this far south. Otherwise, most of them go this way, and then they just kind of get hung up here in, about south central Texas. That's usually what's going on. So to understand how the thunderstorms work, we have a towering cumulus stage where it's just basically cumulus clouds. We'll have a picture of one that looks that's very elongated, but that's where we're just primarily, there's little rain, but a lot of updraft into it. There's the mature stage where we actually get an updraft and a downdraft with the rain. You can get lightning in this time frame. There's a tornado potential, but that's probably not going to happen if it's just a standard thunderstorm. And then you have a dissipating stage where everything's just raining out and it's just primarily, downdraft oriented. However, for severe thunderstorms, we need one more ingredient, and that's wind shear. And that's basically the change of wind, speed, and direction with height. And what we end up with, instead of a storm that goes straight up and then rains in its updraft, and which cools it down and drags everything and gets things, slows it all down, it shears it so that it's pushing the storm over to a tilt so that the rain is falling out ahead of it and the updraft. And the updraft can continue to support more thunderstorms coming, increasing. It also causes rotation. If you see the wind directions kind of change direction all the way up, so you end up, if you looked overhead, it'd make kind of a, let's see here, spiraling upward. Yeah, it'd make a like a helical circle all the way up, looking at it from on the top, and it keeps the downdraft away from the main part of the updraft storm. Now, one of the interesting things that we have is the wind speed is always a little slower at the earth due to friction than it is aloft. So you end up with large vortex tubes. You can't see them, it's just the wind. But you could, if you put a paddle out there, you could probably see them actually turning in a horizontal direction. Now, as the instability and you get a good updraft, it will actually start to take those tubes and push them up, like in this picture. Eventually, one of them will dominate, and you can end up with a supercell in this case. So, based on where the updraft is, we can have different types of thunderstorms. We have the single cell, which are usually weak and brief, not usually severe, but they can be every once in a while. There's the moderate ones, moderate updraft. So these can be severe, and there can be lines or in clusters. And then there's the very intense updraft, where you end up with a supercell, and they're almost always severe of some sort, whether it's large hail, winds, or a tornado out of them are always possible. So squall lines, they're like the name says, they're a line. You notice that they have this shelf cloud out in front, so they end up with the rain and everything falling in underneath it. The updraft is in the front as it goes running across. Quite often they can be severe. They can produce hail and damaging winds as well. Sometimes tornadoes. So we have to watch carefully to see if they form a little like hook on the front of them. Sometimes that can do it. Other ways that we'll get it is the winds will be blowing through and it'll actually bow out part of the thunderstorm line. And we can usually see that there's going to be high winds coming out of that then. Supercells. So this is north of Dallas in October 2019. So here's the hook echo. Let's see if this one does. Nope. Here's the hook echo on the reflectivity. Here's the spin of the inside the storm itself at that same location. Here's a debris ball in one of the dual pole data, and I'm not sure what this is. I think the spectral width, which shows that there's a wind change going on in there, and so those all those are showing that there is a significant threat in that storm. And this is kind of like a idealized version of what that looks like. You've got basically the winds are kind of swirling into the inside here. It's like a mini low pressure system with cold fronts across everything. So the updraft versus the downdraft. The updraft is usually in the rear of a supercell, and then the downdraft in the front, where you have all the rain, just like in the previous picture here. So that's in this section, and then the updraft is coming in, usually through this direction. Sometimes you'll see cumulus congestus. I was saying the early towering cumulus. That's what these things are. Also, they call them turkey towers. It's vertically developing clouds indicating weakening and capping inversion, as well as additional favorable for additional thunderstorms. So we'll watch for those usually earlier in the day, and then once the heat really starts to take over, these things will start to develop. Sometimes you'll see the overshooting top, which is a sign of a strengthening storm updraft. It's a good indication of a strong to severe storm, and can informs when the momentum is strong enough that it'll actually break up through the top part of the troposphere into the stratosphere, which is the equilibrium level for this. You'll get a tilted updraft, so it needs to be kind of tilted in a mesocyclone so that it keeps everything separated from the hail and the rain and where the tornado and the updraft is. The wall cloud usually is where the best updraft is at, and it will slowly rotate. That's this, and it lowers a little bit. Usually that's where the tornado will form beneath that area. Funnel cloud, it's not in contact with the ground, but don't always be fooled by the fact that the cloud doesn't touch the ground. Sometimes you need to watch to see if there's any debris, which means that the wind column itself is touching the ground. So that's just something to be aware of. Land spouts, I think I have to start this one here. They're kind of like the water spouts, but they're over land. You'll get a small, if things are just right, you'll get a small shower or thunderstorm, possibly small thunderstorm. They're not tornadic per se. Usually they're formed by two outflow boundaries that collide, and it'll produce just enough rotation that the heat going into the updraft will then start to spin. They don't last for very long. And because their width is so small, it's hard for the radars to detect those. All right, we'll talk a little bit about the supercell. We have hail shafts. So one of the things with a supercell is that the warm updraft is very flat. You don't have any precipitation under it. As it lifts all the rain particles and it starts to form ice, the bigger ones can be supported up closest to the updraft, and they fall out relatively just north and east of where the updraft is. And then the smaller hail might get ejected out a little bit further downstream, and then rain is the rest of the area. So. Oh, I was touching the screen. Yeah, when I say it, yeah. The flanking line is an organized zone of cumulus clouds. It's kind of interesting because they actually become the main updraft as they get mature. So what they do is they keep moving into the storm and then become part of that updraft. So those clouds kind of move along that cold front all the way up into the storm itself. Mammatus clouds, you'll see these often out in the anvil part, out where there's some descending air. They often will accompany thunderstorms, but they don't have to, or severe thunderstorms, and they don't produce severe weather. Downbursts. All right, so we have two types. The microburst, so the diameter is less than 2.5 miles. They last for about 2 to 5 minutes. And then the macroburst, 2.5 miles, they 5 to 20 minutes. Both of them have pretty high speeds they can get to. Usually they're 80 to 90 miles an hour or 100. They're, like I said, most of the time they're like a low-end tornado. I mean, they may do a lot of damage, but they're not that. But these are getting into this is like EF3 damage, 168. And this is EF. First, the impact stage. So as this big ball that's known as a wet microburst, so it's got a big thing of rain in it, and it's coming down towards the ground, and then it hits the ground and then spreads out, kind of forms a little foot, an appendage there. And that's usually when the strongest winds, and it's one of the big dangers to aviation. If they're coming in on approach and they come in at that time, that can cause problems. Shelf clouds. The leading edge of the gust front on a line usually, and it always points away from where the rain is. So it's usually the first thing that comes through with thunderstorms. Again, here's another one. The air flows out away from the storm. The air tends to be colder because of the rain falling then cools everything down. So the air is colder than the ambient temperature. All right. You want to take a break, or do you want to just kind of push through? What's that? Mm-hmm. Okay. No. Okay. Okay. I appreciate that. It gets a little better. Let's go through some examples. We have maybe another. And the numbers on, I got the, all the local numbers, less than
That's the only number on it.
I don't know.
On all the.
That's for the Skywarn spotting.
I don't.
Okay, so that's the spotting.
Yeah.
So we can, I can get that.
I live up to that.
Yeah. So
That's like.
the one thing. There's enough. And then we have to. Yeah, we're expecting to
Most of the time, so if somebody goes in, look behind, you can see around. Okay, go to the side. I gotta go. Okay. I can go. It's gonna be online.
We'll have some virtual online.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. Right up. All right, we about ready for everyone to. I'll try to get this stuff wrapped up here quickly, so we don't have to stay too much longer. So. Okay. Oh, good. Hey, no problem. Okay, so we'll start off here with a few examples of what this looks like as far as what's on radar and some of the different systems that we've had go through. First one is actually part of in Northwest Texas, and it was a record hailstone that fell back in 2021. And that occurred down in this general area, and looks like we're somewhere in the northern part of the hill country, I think, and part of the Big Bend area. So we had a disturbance move into out of northern Mexico into Texas along the Rio Grande on the afternoon of the 28th, which is pretty common. 2 supercells then developed near Del Rio and Medina County, and then combined, they merged, and we'll see that from time to time. If they don't destroy each other, they can synchronize everything, and the updrafts will just get even bigger, and they'll make a big monster. Yes? I don't think they get much more than what we have in that area, but I think it's about equal. In fact, the other day there was storms that they didn't cross the border, and they just kept sitting there right along the Sierra, just out in that area.
Hmm.
Yeah. So just kind of to see how this goes, we had thunderstorms just west of Del Rio. They got intense. One of them got pretty decent, and then a second one formed as it got closer to Uvalde. So there's two supercells, and then it gets a little bit as it's coming down to Hondo. They merged, and so here you can kind of see the hook echo, and then there's a big, large area of rain and probably some hail back in this end. And then we're seeing this, which means that there's probably some sort of debris from a tornado that's on the ground in there. It continues on. Here's the EF1, yet near Hondo. Well, there we go. As it went through, the hail and heavy rain as it's getting into San Antonio. Then there was, it got past or just north of San Antonio as it's getting in towards New Braunfels. And then they were getting a lot of damaging winds. And then the storm weakened as it got into Austin. However, it set the record, the state record for a hailstone on the 28th. This photo of it was taken 30 to 60 minutes after it fell, so it hadn't had a chance to really melt much. The San Antonio office, as well as then the, I forget who the IBHS is. It says Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, and they do hail studies. It's part of the reason that we had the change in the hail size probably about 10 or 15 years ago from 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch, because they were finding that there wasn't much damage at all with 3/4 inch hail, but it was the 1 inch and greater that was causing most of the damage. So that was one of the reasons why we lifted it up a little bit. So this hailstone had a 19.73 inch circumference. The diameter was almost 6.5 inches. Yeah, that'll hurt. 1.26 pounds, and it had almost 40 cubic inches of ice in that whole thing. So, yeah, pretty decent sized hailstorm. Yeah, it got stuck there in all that super cooled liquid water there, and just kept. And it probably, if you look at it, it looks kind of spiky. And usually when you see that, it's actually other hailstones have frozen together, so it makes one big conglomerate of ice. So when you measure large hail, always remember to stay safe. Measure the maximum diameter on it, because that's what we really need to know. I would say weigh it. Try to minimize the melting by avoiding excess hazard or handling with it. Store it in a freezer bag inside a freezer, so that when so the NWS wants to get pictures and details, and they may, if it's a large one, they'll send someone out to document that it was a record. Yeah. All right. So water spouts, we get a lot of water spouts coming through. Up near Port Lavaca, here's a water spout that was on there. They're tough again to catch because they're so small, yards across. When the radar gets that far out, you're looking at a pretty wide beam width on the whole thing. So you're missing some of the actual inflow is inside the beam when it goes past through it. So it's one of those things where it's just difficult to see. And that's why, like I said, we always need spotters, because there are limitations to the technology. Yeah. So while there is some change inflow and outflow on our radar back this direction here, it's so weak that it's like I wouldn't issue anything for a water spout out there unless someone saw it, because it's just that doesn't show up like this thing, which was the Mayfield, Kentucky tornado in 2021. And this is, I mean, that's a pretty easy one to see. You got inbound and outbounds right together. In fact, we'll talk about, this is the storm relative velocity. So basically, if you subtract out the storm's speed and direction, we can see what the winds are doing inside the storm. And that's what this one is. But if it's strong enough, you don't even need to subtract out the storm motion. You can, it will show up like that on the main velocity thing that we use for determining our wind speeds with this. So we can see a ball of reflectivity in the top left there. That usually means that something is happening there, that there's probably debris that's being lofted into the air. The top right, as I said earlier, it's a strong velocity signature with inbound and outbound winds right next to each other. This one in the lower right is the storm relative one that I talked about before, shows there's strong rotation. And then this last one is the correlation coefficient, or CC as we call it in the office. And it's the one that tells you kind of what the shape of what these things are. If it's red like this, it's probably just raindrops. And then if they're big raindrops, you might see get a little bit yellow. But then hail would be something that's even some of these brighter colors here. But when you get something like this in this general area right underneath this reflectivity core, we know that there's debris that's being lofted by the tornado. And in this case, we can watch that on the cross section. So if we're looking at it vertically, you can see it gets all the way up to about 30,000 feet within the storm that the debris was being lofted. As this storm went through, peak winds were 190 miles an hour, so that's well into the EF5 range. 166 miles ish, and then catastrophic damage, 56 deaths out of it. Storm to the south, which we'll see here in a second, was 123 miles and 160 mile an hour for its peak winds, and that was this one here. So they had two very long track tornadoes go into Kentucky that started out in Arkansas, and then in this one case, it cut into part of Tennessee as well. So, all right, storm spotting problems. The tornado may be partially invisible, especially if it can be obscured by rain. It's what we call a rain wrap tornado. We had a problem with that in the Great Lakes. That's a lot of what. Wrapped. So the rain will start wrapping somewhat around it without cutting off the inflow, and it will obscure it, so it's hard for people to see where it's at. Anyways, for the tornado, you're going to see a very smooth appearance. It's touching the ground and rotating. The funnel cloud, again, it's going to be smooth appearance, but it won't be touching, although this cloud is going to be rotating. And then there's scud. So that's just a ragged appearance. It can show some rising motion. It's being sucked up into the clouds, but it's usually not rotating. So in that case, it's not a tornado. It's not anything. It's just some clouds that are there. As one of my friends that I worked with 20 years ago, he's up at Kansas City now, and he used to be he was originally from Nebraska, and they used to call him hang-me-downs. So these things are the hang-me-downs in there that you don't usually do too much. Oh yeah, scary-looking clouds. Yes, SLCs. Yes, I've heard that one as well. So spotting strategy. So you need to find the updraft and the downdraft, and find the favorable spot to look for the severe weather if you're going to go out and watch this. So if you're mobile and your ham radio and you want to tell people what's going on and report it back to the net, find a good spot. If you're out in this area, you're probably a little too far out, but if you see a storm that has a pretty good overshooting top, then it's probably got a really good updraft. So something's probably happening somewhere in that storm. So be aware of your surroundings. You want to know the direction that the storm is moving. You want to keep a safe distance, and you want to have an escape plan if you happen to be mobile on that. we were talking about the Gaylord tornado from 2022 that I happened to see when I was on the front porch, and my wife was yelling at me, we should probably take cover. The thing I was doing was watching which direction is it moving. Is it moving directly towards me or off to one of the two sides? And it was going off to the one side. Okay, it's going to miss us, but not by a lot. No, I'm not. I don't, yeah. I will say that it was very exciting on this from the scientific standpoint, but the damage that it caused to my town up there was just, it was catastrophic. They had quite a bit. Yeah. They can dance around. They typically do have, there is a path that goes in there. What a lot of times when people see a dancing one, it's either a small one, which would tend to kind of do its own little path, and they're not very long lived, or in the really big ones, you'll see not just one big storm. What you'll see sometimes in the damaged debris is individual tornadoes that are rotating around a point inside of it. So that's part of the thing. So when people talk about it dancing, it's like, well, they can, but it's not, I don't think it's quite as straightforward as whether or not they're doing it or just moving straight along. But the bigger they are, the more it's going to be more in a, I mean, it might curve, but it's usually a straight line somewhat, at least in that, as far as that's concerned. Did I answer your question? Feels like I went all over the place with it. Okay. Keep a safe distance from the storm. I've had some friends who have gone out chasing and they end up in the place they shouldn't have been, not too far from where the storm was, from where the tornado was touching down. So here's an interesting thing. I mean, if this weren't there, which sometimes they're not, you've got a nice funnel cloud, but here's where the tornado actually is. It's on the ground. It's causing debris. So you can see that there is a rotating wind column in there. And that really is the tornado, not so much the cloud. Nighttime spotting is not recommended. The only reason you're seeing this is lightning. And I had an issue when I first got out of school. Anytime there were thunderstorms at night, I'm like, that was the days before, having an app on your phone that shows you the radar. And so now that I have that, hey, I sleep through the night, or I'll sit there and watch the radar for a while. All right, how to report. So with the ham radio community, you guys run a net, or at least the Aries Races do anything like that? Okay, yeah, and then the net controller. We found that's usually the best way to do it. Sometimes it's hard to wake people up in the middle of the night, and we're not always sure what's going to happen. So we hate to bring someone in. Plus, over the years, the security issues and the things with the computers, they just don't like to bring a whole lot of people in that have a lot of access to it. Yeah. Yeah. So, oh yeah. So if you guys run a net control, the best thing to do is to call us in on that 888 number, or if you have the phone line on your cell phone, since it does that toll free doesn't mean a whole lot as far as that's concerned anymore. And what we really need to see is, what did you see, when did you see it, and where did you see it at? Or to break it down in an easy way, is we need time, the event, and the location, or it's tell. So if you need to tell what's going on, that's where it is. Ways to report. Well, here are 2 phone numbers. This is the 888 number, and then we have the local office number, 361-289 and 0959, which you can get a hold of any of the meteorologists there in the ops area. We also take stuff on Twitter and Facebook, and we're at NWS Corpus. And then we're also, you can put your report in on impending, which is part of the National Severe Storms Lab. Yeah. 289-0959. So, and if you set up the Skywarn as your contact, then it's probably easier to find that way too. Oh, did you get a picture of it? Yeah. We also have the cards that have the 888 number on there as well. So, in social media, it's okay to put your information in there on social media. In fact, if you're going to give us pictures or video of it, that's the easiest way to do it. However, it's sometimes it's just better to call us, especially if it's a large, wide-scale damaging event. Give us a call. If you've got a tornado, if one of the hams on your net is got something, then call it in, and then we can talk back and forth. You can talk back and forth to the operator who's seeing it, and then we can try to come up with what's going on, and at least we'll get the details that we need out of the whole thing. So that's usually what I tell people a lot of times. Yep. Then we do have a spotter Facebook group. So if you're on Facebook, you can join the group. And the only way to do that, well, no, that's not it, is attending one of these classes. So that's the otherwise, here's MPing, as I was talking about. It's actually you can use it as an app on iOS or Android, and it'll send reports in directly. They stay anonymous. It just gives your location with where it is, so that we know where the report's coming from. And then, okay. And now we're at how to get. So how we're going to get, we have 6 ways to do it: weather radio, local TV and radio, outdoor sirens, and that's kind of limited depending on the area. Some cities don't have them anymore. A lot of cities don't have them anymore. So, weather.gov, family and friends. I know my daughter doesn't do any of the stuff, so I would text her, call her. It's like, hey. Okay. Yep. But the newest thing is the WIA, Wireless Emergency Alert, and weather apps. So if you have a weather app, it'll tell you specifically you can get it so that it'll specifically look at the warning and the latitude, longitude boxes that we put it in. It'll determine whether or not you're in there, and it will send you the alert. The Weather Service has one that's been kind of experimental that they've been using for a while. And so it'll wake me up a lot of times because I have it set for specific. In fact, this morning when San Patricio County was put into that severe thunderstorm watch, it went off at like 25, or I don't know, it was like 5:45. And so then no, not when it wakes me up, and it's not going to do anything at my area. I kind of had an idea with when I saw the watch box. It's like, we're on the southern end. It's probably not going to do anything. One thunderstorm went through and we were done. So anyways, always able to receive warnings, and we put those out for our whole forecast area. So what is WIA? As I was saying, it's built into your phone. The phones that have come out since at least 2021 have, I think, WIA 3.0. If not, some of the operating systems may have upgraded that as well. And that allows that will keep you, so if there's one put out for your county, like a warning of some sort, if you're not in that warning box itself, you won't get the alarm. It'll only go off if you're in the warning box, as far as that's concerned. However, it's only for hail larger than baseballs, so 2.75 inches, winds greater than 80 miles an hour, so that's for the severe thunderstorms, or if there's a tornado or a flash flood. So if we have any of those types of warnings out, those should go through on there. If you have an older phone, and you may have WIA 2.0, and so that will go out for pretty much a whole county, depending on where you're at. So you'll end up with more watches and warnings than you'll probably really want. So lightning safety. So this always fascinates me that The heat from a bolt of lightning can be 50,000 degrees, which is way hotter than the surface of the sun. But, you can't get close to the sun either. So usually strikes the tallest objects, but not always. It can strike the same place twice, especially if it's an antenna. I've seen that. Can strike more than 10 miles away from the storm, and I would say even farther than that. There was one up in northern Michigan, one story of the softball game, and the anvil is out ahead of it, and it was almost 20 miles from the parent storm, and it hit and struck and killed a pitcher at a softball game. So, yep. Lightning. So if you hear thunder, you're close enough to be struck. So we always tell people to stop your outdoor activities, seek shelter, and wait 30 minutes until you hear after you hear the last thunder before you resume anything outside. And get to safety if the weather looks threatening, especially if you're out on the water as well. It poses a hazard. So either get away from the storm if you can. If not, head in at the first sign of it. We do try to give heads up to people who are out on the coastal waters so that they're aware that things are coming towards them, so they can get off the water before it gets into their area. So hopefully. With tornadoes, you need to act quickly, get to safety, and to a safe room, usually the basement or at least some room in the middle of your home, and stay away from windows and doors. I remember doing this as a kid, but not with the window down at the other end of the. So yeah, and avoid the large open areas such as gymnasium and auditoriums, just because they don't have the strength to withstand the winds a lot of times. Yeah, abandon your vehicle, go for a reinforced shelter. If you can tell the direction, drive to a right angle, just get out of the way. Don't try to outrace it. Don't try to do anything else other than just get somewhere safe. Never put yourself in harm's way. There was that video from the mid 90s or early 90s, I should say, from the Andover, Kansas tornado about the guys getting up into the bridges. And that's not a good way to do that because if they had a real, I think the tornado was on the other side of where the bridge abutment was. And from what I was been able to deduce from watching the video, they just didn't have the high enough winds to suck them out of there. But that's typically what the deal is with it. So you just don't want to be in there. Plus the debris that comes flying in there. If you're in the wrong spot on that, the girder may not protect you much from things driving through there. So yeah, don't use the bridges as they used to. People would try to think that was a safe spot. Flood safety, intense rainfall, persistent rain over a period of time. We'll get dam failures. I've worked with those in my career. High tides and storm surge. A little bit since I've been here in the last 10 months. And I'm well familiar with ice and debris jams. A lot of ice jams up in northern Michigan. Yeah, I know. That's the one thing I exchanged everything for. So now I got high tides and storm surge to deal with. So types of flooding, flash flooding. So, the flooding can develop quickly as a result of intense rainfall. Also a dam failure. So those are always things to keep alert for. Flooding that occurs on water escaping from the riverbanks. That's pretty typical. We've been dealing with a lot of that earlier in the season, during the winter season here. And then coastal flooding. Don't be that guy. Yeah, that's a bad day. I'm usually, as soon as I see water coming up, I like, all right, honey, we're taking off with the truck and we're getting out of here. We were up in Port Aransas and the water started coming up over by the jetty and it was into the parking lot. Oh yeah. Yep. Oh yeah, I know. I've seen that now that I've been here. It's like, yeah, that's the one thing we didn't have a lot in northern Michigan because we have very sandy soil and it's got some relief, but not a lot. So yeah, in South Texas, I'm seeing there's more clay and the water's able, it doesn't infiltrate quite as fast. So what? Oh, went wrong direction. Okay, flood safety. Don't underestimate the power of water. 6 inches of fast-moving water can knock you off your feet. 12 inches can move a small car, and 18 to 24 can actually take most large SUVs, vans, and trucks. So, yeah. So that's just be prepared. And flash flood, you need to find an area of higher ground if you're in the path of where the rain is occurring. Don't drive into the water. Yeah, the turnaround, don't drown meme that we've been running around with the last probably 10, 15 years now. And then stay informed with local television and weather radio. Reporting flooding. It's always nice to get reports, especially 6 and 12-hour reports. 24 and 48 are good as well. Multi-day rain can add up, and we'll kind of need that as well. But if you just call in once a day or once every other day, and then you could consider joining the CocoRoz network, in which case you can get an official rain gauge through them. And I used to have one when I moved out of my house and into an RV. I donated it to the office before I left. Flooding over an inch of rainfall in a short period of time, basically an inch an hour or greater is what we're looking for. So if you happen to see that, that's a good thing to call us about, because when you start seeing those faster numbers, those higher numbers of rates of rainfall, then there could be flooding downstream. Oh yeah, yeah. We have to brief the city each week about that. So yeah. It will change. That's the thing. The weather always changes. Estimate the depth of the water if you get it through there. If structures or vehicles are impacted, and also roads are closed or washed out due to the water. So before the storm, have a plan, know your plan, and practice your plan. So remember, find the places in your house that are the best places for you to seek shelter. If you're outside, then you need to find some shelter inside. So just keep that in mind. Spotter resources. We have frequently asked questions on our website, as well as recorded presentations or links to them at least, in spotter cheat sheets as well, which are probably in a PDF format, so you can print them out. And I used to keep a copy of the spotter guide. I only had a few that I could bring here tonight, but there's a copy online, and I think it's in the spotter cheat sheet. Oh, it's hard for me to. I know it's a couple hundred, at least a couple hundred names, at least or more, over our forecast area. So, so spotter, but I used to keep a copy of it on my phone for the spotter guides. So because it's a PDF format, you can kind of just pull it up and see whatever. Now that you've gone through this, you're eligible to take the certificate. So if you click on the first name and last name, and then there's a password, this one. And then just enter your name and the code in there, and then it'll create a certificate for you. So if you need it for ARIES or RACES to show that you've done that. I know some of the CERT classes or CERT groups up in northern Michigan I'd have to sit there and sign certificates. Yep. Yeah, just right there. All right, and that's it. I've still. Okay. Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Wow, that was awesome. Thank you so much. thank you for everybody who hung out. That's great. And we all get new certificates. So one thing I neglected to do earlier, and unfortunately a lot of people took off, but I will do this again next month. Let's say thank you to James for being our president. I was thinking about that as I was standing up here because I'm nowhere near as good at this as he is. And, you know, I actually sent Jim a text and Sparky and said, I don't know what to do. I need help. So I appreciate you, James. And, you know, thanks. So, okay, well, we'll get there. So with that, I'll call it an evening and thanks everybody for coming. Okay.